Hair by Greg Page, the legendary musician and member of the Wiggles. I'm Andrew Lorenzen. I'm the digital media coordinator at SafeBeat. And today we're going to be talking a little bit about Greg's experience in January with sudden cardiac arrest. And Greg, whenever you're ready, if you could just share with us your story in your own words.
Yeah, well, look, it's a pretty big story and it's a hard one to kind of get around. But look, essentially, I'm a sudden cardiac arrest survivor, thank God. And what really hit me hard after having a sudden cardiac arrest was, number one, just the suddenness of it and the fact that not many people survive. I couldn't believe that the survival rate at the moment generally around the world from sudden cardiac arrest is only 10%, and that's really, really low. And I still can't get my head around that. I'm only 1 in 10 survivors of a sudden cardiac arrest. And as I said, the other daunting thing about it is just how sudden it is. My event took me totally by surprise. I was on stage performing with the Wiggles, and because of the cardiac arrest, I don't remember much about the show, but the little bits I do remember, I don't remember feeling unwell. I don't remember having chest pain. I don't remember, having any other symptoms than just what I would normally experience during a Wiggles show, because they're quite physical shows. They're quite exhausting. So I do remember lying on the floor after I collapsed. I don't remember the moment that I collapsed, but I remember lying on the floor and looking up at the ceiling and struggling to breathe, because at the time I thought, well, I'm exhausted. I've just done a show for 1 hour and 20 minutes, and the song just before my collapse was a, fairly demanding song physically. So I would have been out of breath and struggling to breathe. So that was not abnormal for me. There was nothing that rings in my head as saying, oh, gee, I really should have seen the warning signs, because I'd been quite physically active and fit prior to the show. I walked 7.5 kilometers every day. That's about 5 miles. I'd walk five miles every day, and I'd do that in about an hour. So I think that's reasonably good. I'd play cricket once a week. I'd play tennis once a week. So I was very physically active. And sure, my diet has never been the best diet. That's something I really need to fix, I guess. But I had made changes to my diet over the past 10 years because I knew that my diet wasn't great. I'd made changes, I'd improved that. And I thought, well, I'm exercising and I can exercise without getting any chest pain or shortness of breath or any of the classic symptoms of, the warning signs for a heart attack. So to go from all of those beliefs about how I am physically and, not having warning signs, to literally dying on stage that night, with no warning, that really blew my mind. And it still blows my mind that can happen to people for a number of reasons. So of course, as I found out now, I had some blocked arteries in my heart, and I required a stent to open up one of those arteries. But for some people, it is, particularly the kind of stuff that SafeBeat are focusing on, it's cardiac arrest or sudden cardiac arrest that happens potentially because of a lot of genetic reasons. And those things don't always have warning signs. So if you don't get screening done for a youth or an adolescent, you can experience a sudden cardiac arrest. And unfortunately, if you do, unless you've got people around you that know CPR, and unless there is an AED around, your chances of surviving that sudden cardiac arrest will be limited. And that's the kind of awareness we need to create in the community in general. So number one, it's about knowing what your risk factors are. So and this is, got to be very careful not to scare people. We don't want to scare people here. We just want to make people aware of what the reality is. And the reality is that as a human, we are exposed to a range of health issues. And some of those health issues are ones that we are aware of and we know about. Other ones just kind of work away inside of us, particularly with the heart. If we don't know what's going on inside of our heart, we can be on a path to having an event happen like I did. And that sudden event that can take away your life and take you from your loved ones, take you from the people that love you and depend upon you without any warning, that is absolute tragedy. And so that's what we want to try and create, an awareness of the fact that health is paramount, and health of the heart is something that can be screened and can be looked after if you're aware of it. And so I guess in retrospect, had I known that I should have been more on top of my heart health, I would have done that. And now I've got a second chance to do that. Not everybody gets that second chance. 90% of people don't get a second chance. And that is just, that's horrific. We need to change that. We need to change that in a number of ways. We need to change it through our response and our reaction to sudden cardiac arrest. But we also need to change it before it gets to that point. We need to let more people know about what they can do to look after their own health so they don't have a sudden cardiac arrest and be potentially one of those 90% that don't make it through it.
What's it like, and you can let me know if this is too personal question, but since my heart condition, one of the toughest things emotionally is when, you know, I read in the newspaper or in a magazine or something, a story about someone who's passed away of the same condition that I had. And it kind of creates these feelings of, you know, why was I lucky and they were not? Because it's wrong. There's no reason for that. So I'm curious, you talk about, you know, the fact that it's 1 out of 10 people that survive sudden cardiac arrest. What's that like for you emotionally, if it's all right for me to ask, you know, when you hear someone who's passed away of sudden cardiac arrest?
Look, it's very tough. I really do feel that my event happened for a reason, and it happened so that I can now be a champion for this cause and raise awareness about it. You know, the fact that it happened live on a live stream, you know, my family were at home watching at the time, but they didn't know what was going on, of course, because it wasn't sort of revealed. But it was very public. It made media around the world, not all over the world, but certainly in parts of the world, not in Australia. It made the media. So it was a high profile event. I'm a fairly high profile person. I need to use that now to create awareness and save other lives. So every time I hear about somebody passing away through a sudden cardiac arrest, the fact that I've got to keep going at this until we get to the point where we about that less often and that those survival stats increase. Because, I mean, I'm sure you'd be aware that the survival rate in Seattle in the US is a lot higher than many other parts of the world. And when I say a lot higher, I mean like it's like a 70% survival rate in Seattle compared to 10% here in Australia, or even less than 10%. I think in Australia, it's like 8%. And some of those figures are a bit fluid. There's a little bit of elasticity around them, but generally that's the accepted figures. So until we can get the rest of the world up to that 70%, I'm not going to stop, because I believe that we can do that through greater awareness, through more people knowing CPR, through greater availability of AEDs in a general community, and through more people getting screened, whatever age they are, whether they're youths and whether they're doing a lot of sport. And there's a lot of talk about that in athletic youth, that is something that needs to be addressed. So more youth getting screened, more older people knowing their risk factors, more people understanding the role that stress might play in heart conditions and heart disease, and then leading to cardiac arrest. There's a lot of work to do, but I really do believe that in a short space of time, we can change this. We can make a big difference with greater awareness. It's like any issue. Look at things like, okay, I don't want to get political, but you know, I think I have to here, because look at movements like the Me Too movement, the Black Lives Matter, women's equality around the world. There's been amazing advances in relatively short spaces of time. And I guess in some of those, it hasn't felt like a short space of time, but the more voices we have collectively talking about something, the more awareness there is about it. And, you know, I was going to say the great thing. I mean, it's not great. It's something that is advantageous for this cause, the cause of cardiac arrest and heart health. The advantageous thing is that it's science-based. There is a lot of science around it. It's not opinion. There is a lot of scientific evidence that points to what can be done to solve this problem. What needs to happen is we need to amplify those scientific voices through experiences like mine, and unfortunately through experience of those people that have lost loved ones to cardiac arrest. Because the more people that hear about that, like my reaction when I was told I'm 1 in 10, when I tell other people that only 10% of people survive a sudden cardiac arrest, they can't believe it, that they'd never heard that before. So when you get that shock factor, and unfortunately it's true, it's not, it's not fake news for the sake of just building something up. It is true that they are the stats. And when people hear that, they are genuinely shocked that they never knew that before. So the more people that we're able to inform about that and create that awareness, the quicker we are going to see the response improving and those survival stats will increase much more rapidly. So that's my part to play. So whilst every time I hear about somebody passing from a cardiac arrest, there's not a day that goes past without me being grateful for the fact that I'm here and grateful to the people that played a part in my survival. So that's just a given. But every time I hear about somebody passing, it is a sign that this fight has to continue on until we increase those survival stats up to at least that Seattle have achieved so far.
Yeah, I completely agree. You mentioned the people who stepped up and helped save your life. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about that, because I know that's such an integral part of this story, the heroism that really saved you.
Yeah, look, one thing that I want to really impart upon people is the difference between a heart attack and a sudden cardiac arrest or a cardiac arrest. A heart attack can lead to a cardiac arrest, but a heart attack can also go on for days. You can have a blocked artery for days, and you can have chest pain, and you can have a sore jaw, you can have other symptoms of a heart attack and think, oh, gee, I feel unwell, I better go and get checked out. And if you do that, you'll have intervention and you'll survive that. And that is great. So recognize the warning signs. As I said earlier, in my instance, there were no warning signs. I didn't have the heaviness in the chest, the pain in the chest, the pain in the arm, the pain in the jaw, whatever it might be. It was a sudden cardiac arrest. So there's the difference. When you go into cardiac arrest, you're not conscious, you're not responsive. So when somebody can recognize the difference between a heart attack and a cardiac arrest, you know that you're not going to be performing CPR on somebody who's experiencing a heart attack because they're going to be conscious. You'll only perform CPR on somebody when they're not responsive, they're not breathing, and they're not conscious. That's a big difference. So when you can recognize that moment that somebody needs CPR, you can commence that chain of survival straight away. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to test for responsiveness and breathing and consciousness. So check if the patient can actually respond to you. Do they hear what you're saying? Do they moan a response when you call their name? If you clap near their ears, do they kind of flinch? Those are the kinds of responses that you're looking for. Then if there's no response, check for breathing. Put your ear down to the mouth and see if you can detect any breathing. Is the chest rising or falling? The pulse is a little bit harder to detect manually. So I think once you've called 000, triple zero here in Australia, 911 in the US. Once you've called them, you will get guided through what you can do to help that patient survive. And CPR commenced immediately has a massive effect on the outcome for that patient, because if that patient survives that cardiac arrest, if they have had blood flow through their body and up to their brain, if their brain has been perfused with blood and oxygen, their outcome of survival and the outcome for them in terms of cognition and cognitive response, I guess is the best way to put it, is greatly enhanced through CPR. The other thing to remember is that the AED plays an integral role in that patient's outcome. In my case, I went into a heart rhythm called ventricular fibrillation, or VF. Now, a VF rhythm can deteriorate into asystole in the course of about 10 minutes. Unless you have CPR being performed on a VF rhythm, it will deteriorate rapidly into asystole. And unfortunately, an asystolic heart rhythm cannot be shocked with an AED. So there are types of rhythms that can and can't be shocked with an AED. The quicker you can get an AED onto a VF arrest patient, the quicker they'll be shocked back into a more normal rhythm and they won't deteriorate into asystole. So the speed of response with survival and their better outcomes once they have survived that cardiac arrest. And that's been proven to be true in many cases in studies and research around the world. But for me, I've lived that. I had CPR performed on me for about 20 minutes. We're unsure of the exact time frame, but it was about 20 minutes of CPR before the AED was placed on me, and then about 5 minutes that it took the AED to shock me back to life, basically. Now, if a patient gets to the point of asystole, as I said, the CPR is what keeps the heart going in an asystolic rhythm. But then you're dependent upon the paramedics or the EMS team arriving and giving advanced life support, basically. They need to get intravenous drugs into your body to bring the heart back into a normal rhythm. And I think it's something like adrenaline. It's adrenaline that they put into you to really give that heart the burst of life that it needs to come back to life and keep you on virtually life support until they get you to hospital for that real advanced care. So the people that stepped up in my case knew to perform CPR straight away. And, people at the venue knew to go and get that AED, and they found the AED, they brought it to me, put it on me, and that AED did its magic within 5 minutes. So it really shows. And look, I think at this stage, I've got to go tomorrow actually and get the results of a brain scan. But look, I think my brain is pretty much in perfect order. There's a couple of things that I'm a bit concerned about, but they're not major. And I think if there is anything, feeling at the moment is that the little memory lapses I'm having are because I'm doing a lot of work at the moment in a lot of areas, and I'm trying to stay on top of everything. So I'm forgetting little things, but I need to go and get that checked out in case there is something that has been as a result of my cardiac event. But look, given what I went through and given the duration of time that I had CPR performed on me for, I think my brain is in incredible condition. And that is a testament to the quality of the CPR that those people gave me on that night. And for that, I am just incredibly grateful because I've read studies, I've read papers on what can happen to patients that go through cardiac arrest that don't receive good quality CPR. And there's a lot of research done on that. And I read that and I just think I am so fortunate to have come out the other side of what I went through virtually unscathed, if not totally unscathed. And so again, looking at my experience, I have to be an advocate for this. I have to make sure that people know the story and know the difference between good quality CPR and just bystander CPR. They talk about bystander CPR, then they talk about trained bystanders. And again, one of those stats is that if you've got trained bystanders performing CPR as opposed to just bystander CPR, your chance of survival with better outcomes goes from 10% to 70%. It's the same as AEDs. If you get an AED on a patient within the first 3 minutes, it's a 70% chance of survival as opposed to 10%. These outcomes are shown in research papers from studies all over the world. And it's just so powerful. If people can know this, people can just know that, okay, any attempt at resuscitation is better than none. So if you see a patient in cardiac arrest, don't just go, oh my gosh, what should I do? If you've identified that patient needs CPR, give it a go because you can't do any harm. You can only do good. Just jump on their chest and start compressing in the middle of the chest there. Put your hands together, kind of like that with the heel of your palm in the center of the chest. It's hard to do it this way, but kind of like that, and start pressing to about, a depth of 5 to 6 centimeters. So 2 to 2.5 inches. You've got to press hard. And I know that they must have been pressing hard because my ribs were broken or fractured or whatever for a good 7 weeks after my event. So I know the pain of that, but man, I'll tell you, I'm so glad they jumped on my chest and they just pushed away because without that, I can tell you, I'm pretty sure I would not be here. So if you ever come across somebody who's unconscious, not breathing, not responding, pulseless, just commence CPR as soon as you've called 911 or 000 here in Australia. As soon as you've called that emergency service, start CPR straight away, then look for an AED. You know, if you're doing the CPR, send somebody else to look for an AED. If you can't physically keep going with the CPR on your own, if there's somebody else there who can help out, and that's what happened in my case. There were 4 people performing CPR, taking turns, and that's what it takes to save a life. It takes a team effort. So we've got to educate people. The more people that are educated, the more people there are that can step up and be part of a life-saving team when it's needed.
Absolutely. Do you think that that's something that should be integrated into schools' curriculums? Should students be taught how to learn CPR at an early age?
Absolutely. From a very young age, yeah. Look, I've written a song about CPR that's designed for early childhood. It's sort of for children 4, 5, and 6 years of age, to teach them not how to perform CPR, because, well, it kind of does, but it just teaches about the notion of CPR, and that it's practice that we do when somebody needs to be revived, and it keeps the blood flowing around the body, and that's what it's for. So at that age, we can teach children that that's what CPR is. A child of 4, 5, or 6 years of age is most likely not going to be able to perform CPR effectively, good quality CPR. However, if from that young age they're educated about what CPR is and what its function is, once they're old enough to capably perform CPR, it becomes second nature. It's part of their psyche from a very young age. So yes, the more young children we get informed about CPR, then the more older children we can get trained in CPR. Then the more youths in high school we can actually get trained and qualified in CPR, because they can do a CPR course. Then I know that in some parts of the world, in order to get a driver's license, you have to pass a CPR course. I think that is a brilliant idea, because if you're out on the road and you come across a car accident, there's a chance that some patients in a car accident will require CPR. And if you're first on the scene, you don't have to wait for paramedics in order to save that person's life. So personally, yes, I think that's a natural progression to go from junior school, elementary school, into high school and senior school, into driving and adulthood. If you know CPR, you are well equipped to save somebody's life. And in the US, I believe the figures of sudden cardiac arrest are somewhere around about 300 and something thousand per year, sudden cardiac arrests. So if you look at only a 10% survival rate in that, you're looking at 90%. That's like 290,000 people or thereafter passing with sudden cardiac arrest every year from a number of causes. So some of those will be youths. You know, I heard a stat, I think it was on the SafeBeat website, that 6 children every day will pass a sudden cardiac arrest. That's a lot. Okay, it's not a lot in the scheme of things when you look at those number of cardiac arrests, but 6 every day, that's too many. So the more people that we can get screened and be aware of their potential risk factors, the more lives can be saved. And that is a mission that we need to be on in order to save as many of those youths, and then into adulthood, many, many more lives. So it's a great thing that SafeBeat are doing, and I want to be a part of this mission and help raise that awareness and increase survival rates everywhere that we can.
Absolutely. I completely agree with all that. And I thank you again for being willing to share your story, because that's exactly what this does. It raises awareness, especially from someone of your stature and fame and the sway that you have over young people in particular. I mean, it definitely communicates to them the importance of getting screened, of getting CPR certified, of learning all about this issue, which unfortunately so many people are a little bit woefully uninformed about.
Can you talk a little bit about your recovery after your sudden cardiac arrest experience? Because I know that that must have been a long and daunting process. And by all indications, you seem to have made a pretty miraculous recovery from it. You seem to be doing quite well.
Yeah. I'm doing incredibly well. And, you know, my wife is a cardiac nurse, actually.
Oh, wow.
So in this field for a long time. And so for many years, she would come home from work and talk about stenting procedures and catheters and stents and what they do at work. And I would listen to that, and I would understand some of it, but now that I've been through it, I understand it a lot more. And of course, I have a greater interest in it, and it resonates a lot more. So I can listen to her stories now with a greater understanding. It's always hard, when you're listening to things detached from it. I guess if I had have been to the lab and seen some of the procedures that they do, it would make a lot more sense. But as I said now, look, Vanessa cannot believe the speed with which I recovered from this event, given the extent of the time that I was gone and the time performing CPR. So my recovery has been, look, I'm going to say easy. And I think for me, it's been easy because I was, like I said, I think I was fairly fit before my event. You know, I wasn't, you know, incredibly obese. I wasn't struggling to exercise. I was doing a lot of physical exercise. So part of my rehab was physical exercise. It was walking every day. And because I used to walk a lot prior to my cardiac arrest, doing my walk in rehab was, you know, that was something I enjoyed doing. It wasn't hard work. But what did actually resonate with me was the intensity with which the cardiac nurses asked me to be exercising at during my rehab. And so I have my new watch now that sort of tells me heart rate as I'm out walking, so I could monitor that. And I'll be looking at my heart rate thinking, gosh, I've got to get that up a bit. I'll have to walk a little bit harder now. I've got to really push this heart rate to get it up and make sure that it recovers. And that's kind of it feels counterintuitive. You think, God, I've just had a cardiac arrest and they want me to push my heart rate. They want me to get this heart really pumping. It feels counterintuitive, but I think it really did pay dividends in the end, because right now, I feel so strong and healthy. It's 6 months now. It was 6 months ago yesterday since my event. So 6 months on, now that my chest is not sore from the CPR, from the broken ribs, I can really feel the difference that the stent has made inside of me. You know, I can exercise now. And whereas before, you know, like I said, I thought I was fit and healthy. I can feel the difference now compared to before the event and before the stent was put in. So I guess in retrospect, there were signs. There weren't the typical signs of, you know, heart attack. There wasn't the chest pain or any of those things. But I guess I felt a little bit unfit now that I can see what I can do since my cardiac rehab. So back to the question about how my rehab was, it was really interesting because on my walk, even before my event, I'd be walking and I'd walk at quite a fast pace and I'd overtake all these people that were out doing their exercise. And they're walking quite slowly. Even then, after my event and I'm in cardiac rehab, you know, I'm a cardiac arrest patient in rehabilitation, I'm still powering past these people who are out for their exercise. And I'm thinking, wow, if this is what I'm supposed to be doing after a cardiac arrest, these people need to lift their game if they want to be exercising for heart health. And that's not a judgment on people at all, because, you know, until you've been through it and until you know, you're not aware. You're out walking, you think, you know, you get told you've got to walk for 20 minutes every day. These people are doing what they think they need to do. So I'm not taking that away from them. What I will say, though, is I think, unfortunately, people need to have a look at how intensely they're exercising, if they're exercising for heart health, because you can go out for a pleasant walk and that's, you know, it's meditative kind of exercise. You're resting your brain, you're enjoying what you're doing. But if you're exercising for heart health, you've really got to go quite hard. And as I said, as a cardiac rehab patient, I really kind of felt it was a bit strange how hard I had to push myself. But it just shows you that you've got to really work your heart hard to give it the exercise it needs to stay heart healthy.
Absolutely. That's certainly something that I wouldn't have guessed, and I don't think most people who haven't been through that experience would have presumed.
Yeah. And again, look, not being a medical person, I can't give medical advice. It's just an option, right? But what I am going to say is that anybody over the age of 40, you know, this is sort of not on the same path as SafeBeat at the moment, but this is for people like me who think they're healthy. If you're over 40, go for regular checkups to your GP, you know, get your blood pressure checked, get your cholesterol checked, you know, even ask for a stress test every now and then. You know, they'll put you on the treadmill, hook you up to an ECG, they'll push you through your paces, see how far you can get. They'll monitor your heart while you're doing that, and they can detect a lot of issues just through that stress test. Just like with SafeBeat for youth, You know, the ECG screening, or I think you call it EKG in the US, mate.
Exactly. We use both terms.
Yeah. So ECG or EKG screening can do a lot. And that is the message. Please, please get screened, because it's an amazing thing to have done. You know, as you know, Andrew, you had something picked up at the age of, I think you said 12.
Yeah.
Now that's very young. Nobody wants to think that their child could have an issue at the age of 12. But wouldn't you rather know if they do? And in your case, Andrew, you know, you might want to just share a little bit of your story, but you've shared it with me, and it's incredible. The fact that you had something there that was detected at the age of 12, had that not been detected and had that surgical procedure done on, you might not be here today. And that's, you know, I'm sure for your family, that's something they're incredibly grateful for.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Just to share the story, when I was 12 years old, I was completely healthy. I had no symptoms whatsoever. Kind of like Greg was saying, I didn't have the faintest clue that I would ever have any cardiac issue in my life. And my mother saw a advertisement on television for free EKG screening at Nicholas Children's Hospital, then called Miami Children's Hospital. And being a very overprotective Italian mother, she decided, no, I'm going to take him in, just the precaution, even though I don't see any symptoms, even though he's never complained of anything. And I remember I was very frustrated with it, that I had to waste a Friday afternoon instead of being with my friends. I had to go to the hospital and get this weird test. And I was like, only my mother would do this. I was very frustrated. But I had that screening, and it took 5 minutes. It was completely free. And a week later, I got the call saying that I had Wolff-Parkinson-White syndrome. And I believe about a month later, I had the heart surgery, the cardiac ablation on it, which fully cured me of it. And if I hadn't had that procedure, if I hadn't had that condition caught, there is a very decent chance that I would have died before the age of 18, given how many athletic events I was participating in, and the propensity of that condition to strike when you're really going through strenuous physical activity and result in sudden cardiac arrest, which, as we've talked about, has such an unfortunate low survival rate. And so I echo everything that you're saying when it comes to raising awareness for the importance of screenings, when it comes to not overestimating your own health, especially cardiac health, because I'm living proof of that. And it very easily could have gone the other way. It really is just a stroke of luck that my mother was able to see that advertisement on television, that we ended up going through with the screening when I was complaining and not wanting to do it. I mean, there's so many different aspects of that story that could have gone a different way, that would have resulted in me potentially not being alive today. And unfortunately, for a lot of people my age, that is the case. There are so many people who die of WPW, of other similar conditions, which once they're caught, are remarkably treatable or entirely curable. My heart surgery, I was in the hospital only for, I believe, 2 days. And I was back to doing full athletic participation within a week. I mean, it was, as far as surgeries go, and I don't mean to imply that there's any non-serious heart surgery, it was a walk in the park. And that was to fully cure a condition that could have killed me. So it's amazing what they can catch. But the important thing is that parents take their children to get screened, that organizations raise awareness for the importance of screenings and make sure to try and offer either low cost or free screenings when possible, because, especially in the United States, I don't know the exact realities in Australia, but so many people are uninsured or underinsured. And so there's so many difficulties and disparities in terms of access to quality healthcare and cardiac screenings because of that. So it's so important for everybody, from parents, from organizations, from the government, to trying to enact mandatory screenings and EKG testings and CPR awareness for students. There's a role for all of us to play at every single level in society to try and end this, I guess I would call it an epidemic, because there's so many people who pass away of it that truly don't need to. And it's heart-wrenching. No pun intended.
I'll tell you what, Andrew, you're an amazing ambassador for SafeBeat, because you embody exactly what their mission is. You've lived it, and that is just so phenomenal. People need to hear that story, and hopefully it should resonate with every parent, because if you have the power to take your child somewhere and be forewarned about, so the principle is this: you go and you get screened and you find out. You are then informed. Now, information is the key to empowerment, right? So you either know that you do have something that needs to be addressed, or you know there's nothing to worry about. But that model at a young age needs to be applied right through life. You take whatever opportunity you can get to be informed about your health, and then you know it's in your hands. You can choose what you want to do. And for SafeBeat to be able to provide this or offer this incredible life-saving screening, if other people can understand the power of this and just how many lives can be saved, whether you're a parent, whether you're a business, an organization, if there is some way people can help save these lives, jump on board with what SafeBeat are doing, because it is an amazing service and it's an amazing organization. It really needs to be promoted everywhere so that parents have that same privilege that your parents were given, Andrew. Your mum was so, she was given a gift that day. She was given the gift of your life. Dad. So imagine how many people can be given that gift today when they see us talking about this. It's a matter of whether or not they want to receive the gift. That's the thing.
I think you're absolutely right. And I think that's a perfect note to end this on. For everybody watching, thank you so much for tuning in. And again, please get screened, get members of your family screened. If you're able to, try and get CPR certified, because it is so important and it can save so many lives. And thank you, Greg, again, for taking the time to speak to me, to speak to SafeBeat. And
Not at all.
Such wonderful leadership on this issue, because it really is impactful and it's moving for everybody, especially people like myself who have been through certainly not the same experience, but similar experiences in the cardiac realm.
Well, look, Andrew, thank you for what you do. You're amazing, and your story needs to be highlighted to help people understand the importance of what SafeBeat do. You know, my story is high profile, absolutely, but your story absolutely embodies the mission of SafeBeat, and more people need to hear just a powerful story. And it's just one decision that people need to make. But we need more people to get behind what SafeBeat are doing to enable SafeBeat to keep going, enable to fulfill their mission of providing this screening to youths and saving lives, and preventing heartbreak in many families throughout the USA. So I applaud SafeBeat, and I want everybody to get behind this mission because it's so crucial.